Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha Priti, and I'm here with the family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad Gita. We started back in August. We are now on the fifth chapter. So it's May now. And we're on the fifth chapter. And today we're going to start at text 19. So chapter 5, text 19. And today we're going to talk about a theme that we've talked about a good amount in the Gita, but as we go through our journey, we get deeper and deeper into this theme of the dealing with the ups and downs of life. So many of us, I oftentimes get swept up into life's ups and downs. Maybe it's a new job, a big achievement, a tough setback. Right? In these moments where we oftentimes feel like our happiness depends on what's happening around us. We feel so affected by that. So the Gita teaches us a way to stay steady no matter what's going on. Right? It offers us a profound insight on how to navigate these roller coasters of life with a calm and spiritual perspective. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. We'll dive into how we can stop getting so caught up in these fluctuations and instead tap into something deeper that helps us stay grounded no matter the circumstance, no matter what's going on around us. I remember when I first started practicing yoga, just the yoga asana, maybe 15 years ago. And in my yoga teacher training, we did like these vision boards of, what vision board of like what you want your life to look like. And I remember doing in this magazine, I found this picture of this huge whale like swimming through the ocean. And then this woman next to this whale, just like meditating. In other words, like she looked so calm next to just like, this huge thing going on around her. She was just like very steady and calm. And I remember seeing that and thinking, I want to be like that. Like no matter what's going on around me, I'm unshaken. I can just keep my inner calmness. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with text 19. Does somebody want to volunteer to read? Maybe Stella, do you want to read today? Is that okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So we'll start
Those
with
whose,
19. Oh, you
okay.
have it up already. Great, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, sorry, I have my book.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman.
Thank you. So this verse again talks about those with equal vision. And it's saying those with equal vision are as good as liberated, even while they're in this material world. So they're free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. We're all subject to these modes of material nature. But if you have equal vision, you're free from the influence. And when it says Brahman here, Brahman, the supreme, Brahman is beyond the modes, right? Brahman is beyond the modes. And so by having equal vision, they're as good as Brahman because Brahman is beyond the modes. It's situated in Brahman. So Krishna explains how this equal vision places someone in alignment with Brahman, that spiritual platform. Because again, the soul is transcendental. And therefore, what's happening in this material realm doesn't truly matter because it's temporary. And what happens is the soul becomes attached. But when it understands that nothing material can bring true happiness, right? Because its real identity is spiritual, then the attachment to the material world naturally fades. The more that the soul can realize its real identity. So when a person sees everything materially equal, isn't affected by these ups and downs, they no longer have attachment to it. That's what that means. When you can have this equal vision, you no longer have attachment to it because you're connected to something higher. So one who understands that the supersoul, that God in the heart, is sanctioning everything. Remember, we talked about the three doers. The supersoul, the God in the heart, is one of those doers. You're sanctioning everything, just like a judge, sanctioning everything. Therefore, everything that occurs by God's will. And when we know that and we have trust in that and we have that relationship with God, we can remain calm even amidst the turbulence of the material world. So this is the vision that we want to aspire for. A devotee sees everything in their life, every situation as God's kindness. Imagine that. Everything that happens to you, you're seeing as God's kindness. That's the kind of relationship that you have with God, the kind of trust that you have in God, like your best friend, like your well-wisher. So if we see everything that happens to us as God's kindness, then this only increases our devotion. Even things that, you think maybe are bad at the time or not desirable, not what you wanted. If we could see that as God's kindness, that can increase our devotion. And a lot of us figure out over time that really, even if we thought that wasn't what we wanted at the time or wasn't desirable, it actually was in our best interest. We see that as time goes on. So there's no excitement over the changes in the world. And this is how a person experiences liberation. Because the bondage that we talked about a lot arises from our desire to enjoy the world. Right? We are little mini controllers so that we want to enjoy. And these desires stem from the belief that some things bring joy and some things bring sorrow. We have this duality, this duality mindset. We see duality everywhere. But once we become liberated, we don't have that anymore. Once we become liberated, we're not attached to the things in the material world anymore. We no longer see material things as sources of happiness or sorrow. This is as close to liberation as one can get. So the Lord is flawless because he's free from this attraction or hatred. And similarly, when a living entity is free from this attachment or aversion, they're able to enter the spiritual realm. So being flawless means having no attachment or aversion. And what we're going to talk about today, what the next verse is going to talk about, and we're really going to dive into deep. We're going to spend the rest of the class on this next verse, is how one can practically do this. Krishna is going to explain a process by which one can practically do this, because this sounds like a pretty high order, right? Not having any attachment or hatred, this just being very steady, right? It's a very tall order, but Krishna is going to explain the process that we can do it. Okay. And if anybody, we can move on to the next verse, unless anybody wants to share anything. There'll be lots to talk about in this next verse. I'm excited to get into it. So when you're ready, Stella, if you want to read us 20.
A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence.
Okay. So this next section, until the end of the chapter, Krishna is going to describe characteristics that somebody who is perfected, somebody who's liberated, naturally possesses. Right? And these same characteristics are things that we can consciously cultivate as practitioners. So again, this is like both the goal. This is what these perfected beings naturally imbibe, and then also we can try to cultivate these just by practicing. So they're the symptoms of a self-realized person. So the first is that he doesn't confuse his body with his true self. His true self is the soul. It's encased in this mind-body package. Right? But our true self is the soul. Our true self is a fragmental portion of God, just like sparks in a fire. Okay, we're quantitatively, we're qualitatively the same. Quantitatively different, we're much smaller. We're sparks in a fire, but qualitatively the same at our true essence. This person is not overly joyful when they achieve something. Okay, and that's not saying that being happy is bad. That's not saying that we can't feel joy. But it's when we become overly infatuated with it, such that it controls us. That's what we need to look out for. So, for example, like I used to have a good job and I used to make good money, and I used to spend a lot of money because I made money and I spent a lot of money. Now I don't. I don't at all. I don't make any money now, which we're just living off my husband's salary, and we had to cut down quite a bit. But to be honest with you, I barely notice the difference. I know that's because I don't have much of an attachment to money. If I have it, I'll spend it. If I don't, it doesn't bother me that much. And also, especially now that I'm more conscious of God's presence and my purpose in life, the shift doesn't even shake me. So it's not that, if you have money and you spend money or, whatever it is that you're doing, it's not so much that you're doing it, it's the mindset around it, the attachment to it. So maybe it is giving you some kind of pleasure, but what happens if that's not there anymore? Where are you, how are you attached to that? And it could go the other way too, right? Like you might make good money and get so much joy from it that become very attached, and then when it's gone, you're not just shaken, like you might even compromise your values trying to get it back. That's the danger. That's what we're trying to keep away from. That's the danger that Krishna's warning us about. When our happiness depends on external gain, we're setting ourselves up for inner turmoil. So we have to look out for that. So he says here, the first thing, he's not overly joyful when he achieves something. He doesn't lament when he loses something. Okay, just like that. Just like if you have a lot of money and you lose it. He doesn't lament when he loses something. And this is really big because naturally, just by nature of material existence, life's going to push people up and down and up and down. And sometimes when we're on that down, we feel so overwhelmed that we desperately reach out for anything to lift us up. Sometimes when we're in that really low place. And for many, this sometimes comes in the form of drugs or alcohol. Like, does anybody know someone like that, or maybe you've been like that before, where maybe you just live for the week, maybe you just live for the weekend so that you can escape? Like these drugs may provide a temporary relief, but they're also like a quick band-aid, right? That feeling only lasts as long as the chemical high that you get from it. And afterwards, oftentimes the crash leaves us feeling even worse than before. And why does this happen? Right? Because the nature of life, it's never going to stop sending difficulties. That's just the nature of life. And drugs weaken our capacity to endure pain. So when the next blow comes, the person is even less equipped to handle it. And also, so the nature of life, the nature of drugs, they have a powerful gravitational pull. So even when life is good, drugs are still, whispering to us, like, just one more time, just one more time. Right? And the craving goes stronger, not weaker. Like, just like, an alcoholic, I know a couple alcoholics, and they don't need a reason to party, right? Anything good, they're ready to drink. Anything sad, they're ready to drink. So, and this is the nature of drugs. It just kind of encompasses our lives. And then also the nature of people. When we want to stop, but we can't, our self-confidence takes a hit, right? We lose faith in ourselves. And this compounds the pain. And then we experience this great pain. Okay, then we're going to reach for drugs again because that's what we're used to doing. So if you're not into drugs or alcohol, that's great, wonderful. But don't be so quick to say that, oh, I don't take drugs, I'm fine. Because there's all kinds of unhealthy ways that people try to cope with life's discomfort. And we just kind of unpacked, how it looks when we turn to drugs or alcohol. But so many of these things can be deadly for us, right? Maybe not in the same way, but they can bring our consciousness down. Things that we turn to, right? Like overeating or binge eating, scrolling endlessly on social media, shopping or spending money compulsively, porn or compulsive sex, excessive work or achievement. Anybody throw themselves into that to get this high? Right? Isolation or shutting down emotionally, blaming others or constantly complaining. This is one that I turn to. People pleasing to gain approval. Right? All these like kind of temporary highs that we go to kind of relieve ourselves from some discomfort that we feel that ultimately lead us to greater levels of discomfort. And that's kind of the trick of this material existence. And therefore, the only foolproof way to deal with it is to take ourselves out of the matrix completely. And that's what the Gita is helping us to do. The Gita is telling us that we can't stop life's lows, but we can stop ourselves from getting low. We can't stop life's lows, but we can stop ourselves from getting low. How can we do this? By connecting ourselves with something higher, higher than our situations and our emotions is our spiritual essence, our souls. Because as spiritual beings, we're part of the supreme reality of God. We're part of God. And by spiritualizing our consciousness, we can face these dualities steadily. So we spiritualize through these practices, right, which raise our consciousness to the spiritual level. These practices being listening to sacred literature, right, chanting God's name, association with like-minded people, all these things that can lift our consciousness. All those other things I listed can easily bring our consciousness down. But spiritual life only brings your consciousness up. This is like the foolproof way to get out of this matrix, to get out of these ups and downs. This is by connecting with God. And by connecting with God, we gradually attain this inner stability that isn't shaken by life's lows, like that woman sitting next to the whale that's very calm internally. The whale's just swimming all around her. We can attain that, and this is how. Does anybody want to share anything before I move on to the next? Maria, yes, please share with us.
Was having trouble getting unmuted. Yes, yeah, like you, I was a software engineer, systems analyst, and materially everything was thrown at me, but I never valued it, and I intentionally gave it up when I realized I was a healer and that God wanted to work through my hands. So
Wow.
that wasn't a problem for me, but recently I've had to move 3 times in the past 5 years, not because of wanting to, but situations that were just arose. And this last move, what I had to do very quickly because the new owner of the building wanted to move into my apartment. So it was all very stressful, and I finally accomplished it and thought, oh, maybe I can breathe now. And somebody put through all these fraudulent charges and wiped out my checking account and overdraft. And I was just beside myself. So it was really taking away all of the bliss and transcendental energy. Was just like, how do I how do I cope with this? But it took a week, but they put the money back. My bank put the money back in my account.
Wow, I'm so happy to hear that. I knew that you
Yeah.
were struggling with that.
So
Wow, that's
that was
amazing.
just all like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? And then the storm came up like the night before I got the money back. And then, there was all that to deal with and trying to get around the city. But I'm sure eventually I'll figure out how this all happened. And I mean, I wasn't blaming anyone or looking like it was just like, wow, this is really weird. Like, how do I cope with all this? Because I'm not used to focusing on material things, but when you're moving, you kind of have to.
Yeah, and it's one thing to not be attached when it's just like such excess, when it's like, okay, I don't need all this excess. But when it's threatening like your very security, like
Yeah.
your shelter and your, food on
Yeah.
your plate,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a whole nother level of,
Oh,
so yeah, Krishna really challenged you with that.
yeah. And then this nice lady whose house I moved into, and I'm renting a room here. I'm thinking, oh my God, what if I can't pay her rent? Like, and I'm just like heartbroken. But
Yeah.
it's all gonna be fine.
Wow, what did you take shelter in when all of this happened to you?
The moment, because I didn't know what else to do, was to just focus on the next step in front of me
Yeah,
and to try not to lose hope.
that's big. Try not to lose hope. Wow. Yeah, Krishna will test us for sure. And I've been through, I mean, not that same thing, but I hear you how it's easy to walk away from a lot, but try to walk away from like, what's really holding you up, your very security. It's like a whole nother level. So, but I'm so glad that you're finding shelter both spiritually and back materially here too. Because that material shelter, it isn't, we can't just let go of the things that hold us up right now. We can't just walk out to the forest and live like mendicants. We're not there yet. So it's important that we have some material security so that our mind can be peaceful so that we can connect to higher truths. That's the process. So it's important, and I'm glad you're getting your legs back under you. Another thing I want to revisit here, while we're talking about this, we talked about this a lot in the last class, is this comparison mentality. Because this comparison mentality plays a huge role in the ups and downs that we experience in life. Like, and we don't even probably realize it to the extent that it does, but something is like when we go to work, and if we're feeling like we didn't perform as well as somebody else, we're immediately feeling bad about ourselves, right? Or if you experience some success, you might feel a little bit proud. And this is natural because our world is competitive. Like comparing ourselves to others almost seems built into everything. Even the structures, the way that we do everything, like schools comparing students with grades. And in the workplace, like job appraisal time, everybody gets rated on a bell curve. Remember, that's the way it worked at my work, and that's the way it works in my husband's too. You're literally put on a bell curve compared to your peers. This is just the way of the world. And sometimes, this is necessary. It's functional. It helps us move around in this world. But here's the problem. The issues arise when we start to develop this compare mentality. And this is when we're constantly comparing ourselves to others and letting their opinions of us shape how we feel about ourselves. So it's like we start equating our net worth with our self-worth. We feel insecure or inferior when we see someone earning more than us. Or if students tie their worth to their grades, they might even lose confidence or become overly proud. And this mentality makes us envious of those who seem better than us. And then we start to loathe ourselves for not being as good. And this is where it becomes just super unhealthy. When this kind of takes over, this comparison mentality takes over. And what happens is we're confusing something functional, this compare mentality, with something foundational. So we're taking a comparison that's meant for the world's functionality, and we're turning it into something that defines our identity. And it doesn't. So sometimes I'm talking to my mom. Maybe I shouldn't even share this, but sometimes, it'll be easy for me to say like, oh yeah, I'm not, so good at that. Or, we live in a really nice neighborhood and everybody has more money than us. And I'm like, oh yeah, we live in like, I talk about how, like we're the lower of where we live, and it doesn't bother me at all. But my mom will say things like, oh no, honey, it's okay. And I'm like, no, mom, it really doesn't bother me. Like I'm totally fine with it. But we know to the degree that we're attached, that we're associating that with our identity, to the degree that it bothers us. If we're not as good, or we're not, as make as much money, or we don't have as good of a job, or, when we feel that hurt, we know that we're kind of confusing that for our identity. And there are things that I do confuse with my identity, but that particular example, it just doesn't really mean anything to me. But that happens. It's a real thing. We're taking a comparison meant for the world's functionality, and we're turning it into something that defines us. And this is the only analogy I could come up with. Let's see what you guys think of this. It's like trying to measure the vastness of the ocean with a ruler. So sure, you may get a number with a ruler, but it doesn't even come close to capturing the true depth or power of the ocean, because the ruler is just too small. It's a tool that doesn't fit the scale of what we're measuring. And this is exactly what happens when we use external measures like grades, income, popularity, or beauty to determine our self-worth. These things can help us navigate the world, but they're never meant to define who we are on the inside. And when we're not as closely spiritually connected, when we forget our essence, we get confused and we take these external things to mean something about us that they just don't. It's just intended to be functional in this world so that we can navigate and get around and work together and reach our potential and these kinds of things. But it's not our true identity, because the truth is we're eternal souls. We're eternal parts of God. And our worth is intrinsic to that. It can't be measured by worldly metrics. That's again like trying to take a ruler and measure the ocean. It's just too vast, right? These worldly metrics don't even apply. But we forget this and we start comparing ourselves to others. We end up feeling superior, if our ruler measures longer, or ashamed if it's shorter. But the real tragedy is that we're standing in the middle of an ocean trying to measure it with a ruler, thinking that we've got it all figured out when we really don't. And the key to breaking free from this comparison mentality is remembering that our true identity is spiritual. And if we really remembered that, we really live from that place, how beautiful we are, or how much money we make, or how athletic we are, it's just almost like it's a joke. Like those are just such small things that don't really define us. They help us maintain this mind-body vehicle. But the reason that we really want to maintain this mind-body vehicle is because it's a temple for the soul. Because the soul resides in that, and the soul can be affected by that. So we want to maintain it. We want to take care of it, and we want to serve God with that, right? Because we want to connect that our true identity back into source, so that we're living from that place. That's why we get stuck in this comparison mentality, because we lose touch with that. We forget our true identity. So in this verse, the Gita tells us that those who realize their spiritual essence, they're not deluded by life's dualities. And these dualities get stronger when we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. But above these worldly comparisons, we have our transcendental core. We're eternal beings, right? Eternal spiritual beings, part of the whole. And in the grand scheme of things, we all have a role, a place, a unique contribution. And when we can connect that with God by practicing this bhakti yoga and strive to serve Him, we're guides us to contribute in the way that we're best suited to. That's what it's really about. It's not about the comparison game. It's about connecting with our authenticity, right? Realizing our unique role, our unique place, and being guided to serve Him in that way, to serve God in that way. And in that process, we rediscover who's always been forgotten, right? Who we've always forgotten because we get so caught up in worldly comparisons. And when we become spiritually realized, no matter where we stand in the world's pecking order, we find this true, steady spiritual satisfaction beyond this compare mentality. And that's another powerful thing this knowledge can do for us, because we're also stuck in that compare mentality and probably don't even realize it. And don't even realize how it can grab hold of our emotions and just take us for this ride where we become even more lost. We become even more forgetful of our true identity, of what's really important. Does anybody want to share anything about that before we move on? Okay. So when the intelligence is steady, when we're not thrown off by life's ups and downs, we could keep moving forward on the path. Just like, we have our mind-body vehicle, we're driving towards a destination. Imagine the road is full of traffic and moving slowly, but just because it's frustrating, we don't turn around and give up. And we also don't stop at every shiny attraction just because it gives us a momentary thrill. We stay focused and we keep driving toward where we actually want to go. And that's exactly what we need to do in our spiritual life. We're not these bodies. We're eternal souls on a journey of spiritual evolution. And we're heading towards this lasting happiness in a loving relationship with God. So along the way, life's going to throw us all kinds of pleasure and pains. But these are all like bumps or distractions on the road compared to the destination that we're heading. Have any of you been to Nashville? Remember, I used to go to Nashville. I used to love country music. And they have the whole strip of like all of these like bars with all these cover bands. And then they have at the end, they have this, what is it, like Bridgetown or Bridgestone Arena. So imagine you're like going to see like your favorite band at this Bridgestone Arena, like the best band in the whole world, you know. And you're going to pass all these bars with all these cover bands on the side. And the cover bands are fine, but they can't really like satisfy your longing that the real experience does. So you don't stop, you just keep going because you know where you're headed. In the same way, the verse of the Gita is urging us, don't let these temporary pleasures make us overly excited, and don't let setbacks knock you down. Stay centered in spiritual knowledge. And how do we do this? We do this by strengthening our intelligence, grounding it in philosophical understanding. Just like what we're doing here, by regularly studying the Gita. Right? We can nourish our intelligence this way, and we're able to stay focused on what truly matters. That doesn't mean life's not going to stop bringing us dualities. It will. That's the nature of this material existence. It's always going to bring us dualities. Be prepared for that. Right? Buckle up. Some are going to be huge, right? Offering enormous pleasure. Right? We're really going to want to stop on that side of the road. Or threatening intense pain. You know, we're going to see that traffic, we're going to want to turn around. But in the long run, if we recall, you know, if we think back a decade ago, even the biggest highs and lows don't really even mean much to us today. Right? What actually matters is how much we've grown. And that's the real question. How much has our consciousness evolved? How much has this journey, you know, helped us grow? And that's where we need to focus. And that's the next point here, is that we never want to get so caught up in the pleasure or pain of life that we forget what it is trying to teach us. So Gita wisdom tells us that this universe, it's like a university. And in this university, each of us is a soul enrolled in a multi-life educational course. And the purpose is to help us realize God's central place in our lives. So through all the ups and downs, through all the pleasure and pain, God remains the unchanging reality. And he's constantly beckoning us to deepen our relationship with him. And the more that we do, the more that we taste a joy that's spiritual, that's steady, that's fulfilling. And so the Gita encourages us to... Am I back? Wow. I'm giving a class on the ups and downs of life, and my computer goes out, and like the first thing I think is like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. I'm so upset about this. And then I remember, okay, what are you actually talking about right now? We have to just accept this is the nature of reality. This is what's going to happen. Things are not always going to go our way. It's going to be good. It's going to be bad. And we have to stay steady. Okay, so let's try to stay steady. Right, so through the ups and downs, I have no idea why that happened, by the way. All my other internet is fine. So apparently my Zoom just kicked me off just to test me. So that's what we're doing here, this university. And we're trying to realize God's central place in our life. And he's constantly beckoning us to deepen our connection. And the Gita is encouraging us to stay balanced in these dualities, right? By anchoring ourselves in this spiritual knowledge and realization. And when we're situated in that space, we start seeing life's pleasures not as ultimate goals, but as glimpses, as reminders of the far greater happiness that awaits us when our consciousness rises to the spiritual level. This is like kind of crazy to really even think about, you know, that like even the greatest enjoyment, think of the thing you enjoy most in this world. Like, you know, for me, it's like maybe hearing my child laugh. That pales in comparison to the pleasure of loving connection with God. That's like almost like kind of trippy to even think about, right? It's like a pig might roll around in warm mud and think, this is heaven. And somebody immersed in material consciousness might feel fully satisfied with like wealth, indulgence, or status. But for someone who's tasted something higher, those things start to feel like mud. Isn't that crazy? It's not that the pig is bad. The pig is just limited in their awareness. And so are we. We're also limited in our awareness. We're just maybe situated a little bit higher on a scale, maybe. But until our consciousness is purified, we can't even really fathom what that's like. But we should know, we have this tendency to always think that we're at the top, to always think that like, this is the best it can be. This is the most pleasure I can experience. Right? But what if we're really at the bottom? Right? What if we're really just pigs rolling around in that mud? So from a Krishna conscious lens, even the most luxurious material experiences don't compare to the ever fresh, soul satisfying bliss of devotional service. The most enjoyable thing you can think of, this connection with God, is still exponentially higher. So when we experience something like this, that's okay, but know that this is just like like limited, like just a tiny little like trailer to the connection that you feel in that relationship with God, to what God really has to offer us. It's so much more than anything that we could experience in this material matrix. It's just like little glimpses, little previews. On the flip side, when we go through a challenge, our losses, our frustrations, our heartbreaks, these can also be seen as God's reminders. They can shake us up just enough for us to remember that this world isn't our eternal home. And if we stay stuck here, clinging to these material pleasures, we're bound for bigger disappointments. So it's like, imagine that you're in a building and suddenly the fire alarm blares, and it's super loud and jarring. And maybe there's no visible fire. It's like even like a false alarm. But the alarm isn't there to annoy you. It's there to alert you to potential danger so that you don't get trapped if a real fire breaks out. And in the same way, the troubles that we face in life, like loss, disappointment, illness, they can feel disruptive and uncomfortable. But we should think of them like spiritual alarms. God allows them not to punish us, but to wake us up, to remind us, don't get too comfortable here. This world isn't your eternal home. And all of us have like layers on layers of attachments that we don't even realize. And once we start peeling those back, we start seeing really just how attached we are. And to the degree that we're materially attached, we're not spiritually attached, right? To the degree that we're materially attached, we need to like transfer that to attachment to spirit. And that's what this is. These alarms, these things that happen to us in our lives that we think are so bad, they're just kind of like reminders, like a fire alarm telling us, hey, you need to take more shelter in God. Because if you were, you wouldn't be so attached to this material matrix. And that's the university that we're going through, like that's teaching us, don't get too comfortable here. This isn't your eternal home. And so these are just early signs pointing to a deeper truth. And that is that if we keep our consciousness stuck in the temporary material level, we're going to risk missing life's real purpose. And when we get really sincere, God throws us at us even more, right? Just to see how attached we are. So be careful, because as you get more and more sincere, you're going to get more of these alarms going off. You're going to get stuck in seemingly more, heartache, these downs, these bad things that happen to you, frustration. And when that happens, we can use that, maybe the next time that happens to you, we should understand that that's really just like a spiritual alarm going off, just like a fire alarm, to say, how attached are you? Why are we attached to the wrong things? And that's what these can be for us. So whereas these highs, these things that seem super enjoyable, We should understand that they're just glimpses, just little previews of the real thing. When we experience the lows, we should understand that those are like, warning signs to show us how immaterially attached we are and where we need to seek real shelter. If we can respond to these signals by turning towards Krishna, we can protect ourselves from the greater danger, the continued suffering in the cycle of birth and death. And then we can move towards eternal peace and shelter. So when we learn to see both pleasure and pain as divine signals, calls to recenter in God, we begin to move through life with less inner turbulence. We can progress steadily, even through the storm, toward our spiritual destination. So that's part of the practice here. It's just going through the ups and downs of life and reframing our mindset around them. What they actually are, what they actually mean to us. They don't, maybe at one time we made them mean something about our identity, but they don't. We lose a job, we're not good enough. Or we get a promotion and we're the best. Maybe at some point we were stuck in that material consciousness, but now that we have this knowledge, we can see them for what they are. We can see the highs as little glimpses, like when we're driving to the ocean and you're almost there and you can start to see it, but you haven't quite got to, really embrace it, get there to really smell it, feel the breeze. You're not quite there, but you kind of get a glimpse. And that's what these little things are. They're like, you turn a corner and you can see it for a second. That's what pleasure is in this world. And pain is just that alarm that's going off, that's telling you you are way too invested in the wrong thing. And if you continue to stay this invested, it's going to take you down. And this is your warning. Right? That's spiritual consciousness. And that's why this practice is so beautiful, because we don't have to go out into the forest and renounce. We can go through our lives and we can just reframe our consciousness around it. We can just reframe, the way that we view things and interact with the world. So this self-realized person, they never get confused. They never mistake the gross body for the soul. He doesn't accept the body as permanent, and he never forgets the existence of the soul. And this is like, when we become overly identified with a movie. We get so wrapped up sometimes in a movie, like overly emotional in this movie, in this material existence. Sometimes my husband and I will be, flipping through Netflix trying to find something to watch. And I'll accidentally pick one that's like has some violence in it. And as soon as I notice this, it's just like, I can't take it. I immediately turn it off. And this is what we need to do with life. Sometimes we become so overly absorbed in the material world, the drama, the ups and downs, the pain and the pleasure. But just as we have that ability to switch off the violent movie to protect our peace, we also have the ability to detach from the distractions and the stressors of life and connect ourselves with spiritual essence. And this isn't the same as escaping, but this is more of, where are we taking shelter? When these big things happen to us, are we letting ourselves just get tossed away by the waves? Like, are we on this emotional roller coaster of ups and downs? Or are we taking shelter in something higher? And that's the key message here. The key message is that we don't have to get consumed by the difficulties or the pleasures, but we can recognize that there's more to us than just this material world, just the movie. And we can turn off the stress or attachment, and we can reconnect with something deeper, our spiritual self. Just as we switch off that violent show to preserve our peace, we can do the same thing. And when we go and we take shelter, we'll be able to show up to that, whatever it is that was shaking us in a way that's much more loving, in a way that's much more clear, right? In a way that's much more aligned with our higher intention. And we'll be able to act from that place. And that's the magic of this practice. It's not that we're just escaping, but we're like refueling ourselves so that when we do navigate, move around in this world, we're not captured by it. We're just kind of like floating around. Have you ever seen anybody who's like has this really kind of enlightened state? They just kind of float around. this world. Like nothing really bothered. I think of my guru, Radhanath Swami. He just kind of floats around. You know, you never see him get like overly involved, or he's just kind of they're navigating in this world, but they're kind of above it. And it's beautiful. And we can practice that. We could try to practice that by when we get confronted with these things. One, we try to reframe our mindset around whatever it is, and then we try to take shelter in spirit. And slowly, you know, we can maybe get to that place. Because that's what the Gita is teaching us, right? That the body is different from the soul. We have a material life, but we also have a spiritual life. Both our body and our soul are real, right? So we exist in this two-dimensional space spread across both material and spiritual dimensions of reality. But when we mistake the material level for the only reality, we become overly focused on problems. And that's when we get in this realm of like obsessing over the problems. They magnify the issues, right? And then we struggle to even handle them because we're just so engulfed in whatever is bothering us that it's like we can't even think clearly. It's like turning a horror movie into something worse than it needs to be. But through this practice, we can elevate our consciousness and experience a spiritual reality. Then when life's problems overwhelm us, we can momentarily stop watching the movie by seeking shelter at the spiritual level. And the Gita tells us that those who are grounded in spiritual reality can face life's dualities calmly. They can draw strength from our unchanging spiritual core. And in that, they can reemerge with greater calm and deal with problems more wisely and effectively. That's what can happen through this practice. Does anybody want to share any? Oh, Stella. Great.
It's beautiful. I love that whole thing about the fire alarm. Your class is really, I really, it's just a beautiful presentation. I wish I could even share it with my students today about, you know, the trying to measure the ocean with a ruler, like their grades, because I know there's a few kids who are getting like D minus, and but their, you know, their voices are so important, and what, you know, it's, yeah, I wish I could, I wish I could express that to them. It was gorgeous. Yeah, and I wanted to just point out too that you know, if something really horrific happens, it's it's not even just like it's such a karma is a very mysterious thing, but also it's we're on this earth with other living entities who want to be controllers, and they also have free will and sanction of the Lord to do what they're doing here in this sandbox we're all in. Um, so if something really horrific happens, it's not like Krishna sent that to us as a, you know, a thing. It's those other entities that we're all milling around with, exercising their free will to do harm. So I think that's and I don't know if I'm expressing this correctly, but I think that's a subtle thing people have to remember. They shouldn't even blame themselves like, oh, it's my karma that I was sexually assaulted or something. You know, like that's just the other living entity doing their thing, and you happen to be in the wrong place. Is it connected to our karma? Well, we're in this world where all these horrible, you know, things happen due to really lower consciousness and free will and narcissistic and sociopathic, you know, karma for those people. Um, but again, we can understand it as, yeah, I do want to get out of this sandbox where we're all playing with sociopathic other people, you know, like let's go home, you know, let's get out. Um, so I think, you know, and I do. So yeah, we have our karma. We things are happening in ups and downs, but it's not even always directly connected to our karma. It's just bumping up against these other living entities in this particular material world.
Well, and the way that we react when we bump up
And
is our
yes, so
karma.
and the way we react is our karma. What so that's so sometimes I feel like, it was Krishna's plan or it sent as a test, like I don't think he actually sent that horrible person to you, but because we're in the material world, the possibility is quite there that we will bump up against those people. But how we react, what we do with that, um, yeah, if we're on this path, we can understand that's a huge fire alarm that we do need to go home and get out of this room with these other people in it, and pray for them because they're really suffering to do that to other people. Um,
Yeah, and
and we're allowed to feel grief that it happened, but also understand it on a higher level. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
yeah, I mean, karma is so complex that even
Yes.
just like unpacking, places have karma, circumstances have karma, people have
Yes.
karma. They all come together, and it's like this super complicated equation of. Um, but one thing that I always like to remember too is whatever, karma, it's not just in this life. So even if you're just this super wonderful person and you go through something bad, it could have been from past life's karma that you're burning off. So we don't even really know. But regardless, we don't need to get stuck in it. We don't need to
Right.
get into this loop of blame or, is God doing this to me? Or we just need to reframe the way that with our response to it. And I like that. It's God's not like punishing us,
Yes.
but we do need to reframe the way that we see it as an opportunity to grow and evolve in our consciousness. And if we can do that, we'll see that everything that happens to us, we can reframe and turn into an opportunity to grow closer to God. And that's the test of this material existence. But it doesn't necessarily, it's not like God's sending these things to us to punish us. It's not really the same thing.
It's all free will. See, free will is woven into the karma as well. Like it's not just this simple um thing like, oh, maybe it was a past life and this had to happen to me as a reaction, but it's also like what's that person's free will who harmed me and what's my free will now? So you can change your karma through your own free will. Like, how are you exercising your free will? Like, look at that person. They're exercising it in a terrible way. How can I exercise it in a way that will get me out? You
Yeah,
know?
and that's why we study this knowledge. That's exactly why
Yeah.
we study that knowledge, this knowledge, so we don't have to be stuck in this karmic cycle, and we can transcend that because this
Yeah.
knowledge does that for us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be thinking about this all week. Thank you.
Oh, good. Me too. Sometimes after this class when I'm walking, I go out and I walk with my daughter and I chant japa, and sometimes these things are just like in my mind still really fresh, and I just like pray to permanently, place them in my mind so that I
Yeah.
don't forget, because it just if we can focus on these things, if we can remember even some of these analogies when we're going through these things, it can be like our lifeboat, to pull us out, to because that's the difference, just like what you're talking about, the difference between throwing ourselves back in that karmic ocean and doing the same thing over and over again and getting out of it. And its knowledge is the difference. So
Thank you.
I'm right there with you. Yeah. And that's so by practicing spiritual life through our sadhana, we can gradually become more balanced and calm towards material things. And we can begin to rise to a higher spiritual platform. And this is what this Brahman realization is. This is what this is about. It's about connecting with the ultimate truth. So when we're equipoised, which we've discussed a lot, it's a key sign of transcendence. That's a key sign of transcendence. Just like a sports fan who's completely attached to the outcome of a game. When their team wins, they're ecstatic. If their team loses, they're distraught. So, however, someone who isn't so emotionally invested can watch the same game and remain calm, whether their team wins or loses. In this same way, when we're spiritually purified, we no longer let life's ups and downs control us. This is the true test of spiritual progress. Like the real sign of growth is when we can keep moving forward steadily, in tune with the spiritual essence of life, rather than just getting caught up in the distractions of the material world. And this is what a devotee does. A devotee may get excited or upset by things like this. You're not going to, we can't just repress our emotions and we can't just be somewhere that we're not. So you're going to walk out of this class and you're going to experience excitement or frustration. Maybe you're given a class and the computer goes off right in the middle of it. And it's like right away, you're just filled with this frustration, right? But a devotee realizes that as long as they're serving God, nothing else really matters. And as long as you're sincerely doing your best to serve God, nothing else really matters. And this is how we can maintain detachment by staying calm and focused and rooted in our spiritual practice. We can continue to move forward on this path to spiritual fulfillment. Like when my screen went off, it wasn't like God throwing a test down to say, oh, where are you? But I can choose to see it like that, right? I can choose to see it like that, and therefore I can choose my reaction to it. Instead of getting all like panicky and like I could just say, oh wow, that was a bummer. What am I going to do about that? There's a difference in our consciousness. And these things, we if we see them like that, we can use them as like little stepping stones. It's like a staircase to transcend this material existence and grow closer to God. So to wrap this up, the Gita teaches us that life's pleasures and pains are temporary, but our connection to the spiritual realm is eternal. And by shifting our perspective, by recognizing that we're not just the body, but eternal souls, we can detach from the material world's emotional swings, and we can move through this life with greater equanimity. So it's not about avoiding life's challenges, but about understanding that we're more than our circumstances. And when we can align ourselves with this deeper truth, we'll experience a steady, unshakable joy that no external situation can take away. So when you walk out of this here today and life throws you a curveball, because it will, because that's the nature of this material existence, remember that it's not the event themselves, but how we choose to respond that makes all the difference. And that's the practice, that's the sadhana, that's what we're training ourselves to do today, to navigate this world more peacefully and mindfully. So that's all that I had. Does anybody want to share a reflection?
I'll share.
Oh, great. I was hoping you would.
I'm driving, so I'm gonna leave the video off. But I'm laughing because I'm going through the same thing right now too. My intention this morning was to be fully present. First thwarted intention with a child missing the bus, and I'm like, okay, we can still do this. We can still stay steady. I'll I'll go on my phone. I'll bring it to school with me, and I'll be back by 8:10. It'll be fine. I'll have coffee and enjoy the rest of class. I just go to pull up to my house, and my son texts me that he forgot something and he needs me to run it back to him at school. So I'm just laughing because, this is exactly what you're talking about, is life on life's terms and the ability to handle it. I could feel some feelings come up, and then I just remind myself, of the bigger picture, zooming out, because studying the Gita has not only helped me handle life's ups and downs, but it's helped me see my duties as sacred. So not only am I as unwaved by the fact that my whole intentions for my morning are thwarted yet again, but I get to do a duty. Like I get to go serve Krishna's child. He wants me to bring him deodorant. Like that's so easy for me to just roll my eyes at and be like, are you serious? But you know what? I have some trauma with my own mother not being able to handle her emotions and always being upset with me. I'm sitting here in gratitude, not only for the message, but for this little lesson I get right now, because not only can I handle it, not only can I show up for my duties, but I get to kind of reparent my own self and my own trauma in all of this. And my morning is still peaceful. I could be hitting my steering wheel, throwing out a couple cuss words. These dang kids just need to get their stuff together. So yeah. And then it also struck me, that I tell my yoga students, You start to get into spiritual life a little bit. Nothing in your life outside is going to change. Nothing has changed for me in my life. Like when I say my life is so much better externally, in fact, some things have even gotten a little bit more austere, but it's the internal joy that's so much better. It's my internal peace as the whale and I can almost swim together rather than me being like anxious and scared of the whale. Now we even know a trick or two we can do. Do you want to see it? Like we have a little show. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that experience that I'm having right as you're giving this, and then also just my gratitude because now I can still enjoy my day. I have such the perspective serves me as much as it serves the greater whole, and I think that's so special, because I'm kind of a selfish person by nature. Like as I try to tell people, is like it serves me as much as it serves the rest of you guys in the world. Anyways, that's all I had to share. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I'm here today.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Brittany. We're all like cheering you on, and then also like taking that inspiration for ourselves as we go into the day and start getting, blown over. So thank you. Thanks for coming and thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to share before we end for the day? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming and taking this journey, and let's lean on this community to really bring the Gita to life, not just theoretically, but as we venture out and go through our days. Thank you all.